Hey, everybody. Welcome to Build with Glide. Happy Monday. I'm Andy Claremont, the head of community here at Glide, and I am so grateful to have you guys joining us today. This is a new series from us, Build with Glide, where we are going behind the scenes on existing Glide apps, or we build new apps from scratch, and the latter is what we're going to be doing today. And with us, I am thrilled to say, is Oscar from V88. V88 is one of our top Glide agency partners based in the UK. Oscar, how you doing this morning or this afternoon? How you doing?
This evening for me. Yeah, really well, thank you, Andy. Good to see you as always. I'm good. We finally got some sun over here in the UK, finally. So trying to enjoy that amongst being in the Glide ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm a little bit envious. Finally get some sunshine. We're a little bit without sunshine over here in Toronto. Before we get into the demo, I just wanted to hit on a few questions to learn more about you guys and what you're doing over at VD8. You're a father-son combo, power duo. What got you into doing Glide apps? Why did you start the agency?
Yeah, so it's a great question. People always ask me this. It really stemmed from personal interest and just curiosity. When I started playing with Glide, I was working for a traditional software company here in the UK, and I sort of noticed that the apps that I was building for myself internally, just kind of messing around, the speed at which I was able to create them and subsequently tweak them and change how they look and add features just almost on the fly, it really caught my attention compared to the traditional software being used at the company that I was working at. And so I introduced the concept to my dad, who has previously been a traditional software developer. And he was he had this wow moment where he sort of fell out of love with the development side of things, and Glide brought that back for him. So we decided to reach out to some local businesses with nothing more at the time than a capability to build custom applications in a matter of days/weeks as opposed to months. And it all sort of just stemmed from there, really. We started to develop a bit of a reputation, and we ended up kind of getting some referrals and finding some sectors where Glide just sort of works really well. And, as Glide has now evolved so much and is continuing to evolve actually at an exponential rate, in my opinion, there's just scope for so many more solutions for so many more businesses out there. And we're keen to grow and continue doing what we love doing.
Love it. And you mentioned in terms of growing the scope and good use cases, field use cases come up time and time again. We've been talking about it a lot at Glide. And you've been doing quite a bit of field app work as well. What is it about these types of apps that appeals to you?
Firstly, I think Glide's a really good fit for these types of app, and the way you can design things bespokely and quickly, but also iterate as you go, means that a customer who's exploring new ways to improve, let's say, their field operations process, doesn't need to know exactly what their app needs to do day one. They can get something out there that does the core basics, and they can iterate and add to that over time, which is just, in my opinion, unbelievable. That's a game-changing feature. And what our customers tend to do is kind of replace the process they have, step one, and then immediately the ideas just start springing off the back of that. And they come at us with all sorts of ideas. Can we do this? Could we do this? And we'll brainstorm and collaborate on how to not only sort of improve their existing process, but how to continue to improve off the back of that, so that they can ultimately save time and continue to grow.
Could you give me some examples of that? Like certain projects that you've worked on where maybe it was taking an initial process that existed and you're turning it into something new or something, totally new from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of customers in this sort of space, but a recent one, which I wrote an article on, which is out there, is for a company called SG Survey, who survey superyacht builds all over the world. And they basically have a team of surveyors who go to shipyards in Italy, Poland, US, all over the place, and they assess in huge amounts of detail the process of building super yachts, basically creating snag lists for the shipyards to kind of make any changes or fixes to the boat before it gets shipped off to the customer. And it's an essential part of the process because ultimately the shipyard's number one concern is this boat absolutely perfect and ready to go for the customer? And they were using Google Sheets initially, kind of online, but they're out in the middle of, in the middle of the ocean sometimes, in quite cold weather. And believe it or not, the use of spreadsheets was becoming an absolute nightmare for them, especially using tablets and phones. And of course, there are different members of this whole process who only need to see certain aspects of it. And so what we've done initially is we sort of prototyped a scenario where now, rather than using spreadsheets, we stick these beautiful Glide interfaces on top of their data, having kind of simplified it a little bit as well, so that everyone involved in the process can now open up an app and just see exactly what they need to do on a given job, and they can go and submit these reports through Glide apps that the head office can then analyze on desktop. And it is truly transformational, that one. So we prototyped it, and we're just in the phase now of kind of developing out the sort of next stage of the project. But there's tons of scenarios like that, and it's, as I say, Field Ops and Glide are a match made in heaven, for want of a better phrase.
So let's jump into that now. Then let's take a look at when we're talking about prototyping and we're talking about building those interfaces in Glide. Let's go into the demo. Let's see how we can work some of this magic, build an actual functional field app in less than 30 minutes.
Cool.
Feel free to share your screen. We'll cue it up.
Okay, nice. Awesome.
So while Oscar is pulling this up for everybody who's tuning in, feel free to drop a note in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. I see we got quite a few folks on right now. And as we go, please ask your questions in the chat. We'll pull them in. This is a live building session. It's interactive. We're going to be doing this together.
Okay, let me share screen.
There we go.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect. Let's pull that up on screen.
Awesome. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here is, and everyone who's tuned in, feel free to ask questions as we go. Every Glide developer has different styles, and there's different ways you can get from point A to point B within Glide. That's the beauty of it. What I'm going to show you is a simple way that a simple methodology that we tend to follow. And I'm going to build the framework for an app that allows users to basically survey rental accommodation. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and start building it. So the first thing that we'll always do is start with the data. So when you create a new app, and just so everybody knows, I've created this app off of Glide tables. When you create a new app, it gives you some sort of generic screens and generic data to kick off with. So what I'm going to do is set up my user table first. So we want people to be able to sign into this and submit some information, right? So what I'm going to do is, given this sort of standard user table, which is pretty perfect, to be honest, I'm just going to add a couple of things. So we've got the user's name currently, we've got their email, we've got a photo that they can upload, and we've got their role. So what I'm going to add in here is an onboarding timestamp, and I'll show you why shortly. So that's a date time field, super simple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in in fact, I'm going to edit the name of this column. Call this photo uploaded. Okay, I'm going to add another column called photo default, because not everyone's going to want a profile photo, right? But we want this app to look nice. And so this is going to be an image, and it's going to be a hero icon. Hero icons is a separate service that's connected to Glide, and they have a bunch of icons which you can plug straight into your apps to give that super clean UI really quickly. So we're going to go for the user one. Now on their website, you can select all sorts of different icons, and it shows you all of their names, but I just happen to know that user is one of them because I use it all the time. The style is going to be outline, and I'm going to give it a color. We're going to go for a nice blue for the theme of this app. Cool. Like that. As you can see, we've got our icon, and now I'm just going to add in a third column, which is telling us which photo to display. So, photo to display. And when you're using the slash here, what it does is it gives a title to a collection of columns. So it's a really nice way to just keep your data super clean. So we're basically going to say if the photo uploaded is empty, then we want to see the photo default. Otherwise, we want to see the photo that's been uploaded. Cool. So if I add in another user there, because I don't have a photo, what we'll see is that it's going to show the icon for me. So that's great. That's just a nice little UI trick. So that's our users table sorted. But now we're going to need a table for submissions, for actually collecting data. So what I'm going to do is add in a new table called submissions. Give it a name there so that it's clear which app we are talking about. Cool. So what information do we want to collect? So we're collecting information here about rental properties. So we're going to want a name. So that's already in there for us. We're going to want an address of the property. Let's say we might want to know what the value of the property is. So we can introduce a number column here, call this value. And this is going to be in, let's go with dollars. We're going to display the units before the number. So that's that one. And we're going to go for a type ID. And you'll see what I'm doing here in a second, but I wanted to show you guys how a choice component works because it's a really, really cool thing to have in Glide. Let's say we might want to add a note like this, an image. Where are we? There we go. Cool. And then we're going to want to know who submitted a report and when, right? So what we're going to have in here is audit slash timestamp. This is going to be a date time field that basically tells us when this was submitted. And we're also going to want the email address of who submitted it. So that's just going to be an email column like that. So that's the data structure for a submission. And so what we can do is use a form to populate this spreadsheet, which we'll go into shortly. One other thing that I'm going to add is a table of property types, and this will come back to the type ID. So we're going to have a types table, and we're going to introduce Glide's row ID here. So a row ID is a really cool way of setting up what we call relations within Glide. Relation is where you link records from one table to another, basically. Using a row ID means that it's never going to change. This ID is never going to change. So if you're setting up a relation between one table and another, it's never a good idea to relate on the actual name of the thing that you're looking to link, because if you, for whatever reason, want to change the name of that thing, you're going to break every relation. So we introduce a row ID to make sure that that never happens. So let's say we might have an apartment or a house or an office. And what we're going to do is use this list to populate our type of property back in our submissions table, basically. The final thing that we like to do with all of our solutions is have a table called globals, which is where we store some sort of top level information, such as the name of the app or a logo or something like that. And you'll see that in play shortly. I'm going to go and add a table here called globals. We're going to call this build with V88, and let's add in our logo. I can directly update images to this database as well. Okay, so that's our data structure set up. We could ignore the things table. In fact, I'll go and delete it right now. Cool, so we've built our database, and what we've got is our users table. We've got our submissions table where the reports are going to end up. We've got some different types of property that people can report on. And we've got our globals table, which again, I'll talk about more in due course. So once we've designed our data structure, the next thing we'll do is just set up the app so that it's ready for people to kind of sign into and things like that. So we're going to go over here into the settings area, and we're going to change the icon so it's a little bit more appropriate. Let's pick a nice house. Great. And we're going to call it V88 field. Appearance-wise, I quite like having the accent, and this is a nice blue. The accent at the top seems to always look really lovely in mobile view and in desktop view, but obviously you can play around with that to suit. In terms of privacy, we want this app to be public, so anyone can access it, but you've got to sign in so that we know who's submitting these reports. And then finally, in users and authentication, this is where you can basically set up your users table. These days, when you create a Glide app, the users table is automatically connected to your user setup. So honestly, you can kind of create your app and start building it without too much work these days, which is really, really cool. Data-wise, we're going to do extra refresh mode, which basically means that it syncs all the time, every couple of minutes. So it just makes it that little bit more up to date when you jump in. Great. So that's the setup complete. So now we've got our database, we've set up the app. So we're going to actually build a bit of a UI now. So the first thing we're going to do is build a really quick sort of onboarding screen where people can first hit the app and build out their profile, pick a profile photo, something like that. So we're going to delete these views, and we're going to add a new view in. It's going to be a custom screen. It's going to pull from the users table, and we're going to call this welcome. Oops. Great. So in here, we're going to drop in a profile component, and the name is going to come from the user profile name, and the role, the subtitle will leave for now. The image can be photo to display. So now if we're viewing as myself, it's not going to show a photo yet because I haven't uploaded one. I'm just going to change this to the accent so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay. Cool. So what we can start doing now is actually allowing people to sign into this app and upload some of their information. So the text entry field there, that's going to write into the user table's name. So in the user table here, we've got name. So this text entry field is going to write straight into there. We've got an image picker here that lets people upload a profile photo. Cool. And then we can add in here a button. So this can be a button that basically onboards people. We can have a custom action here that says set column values. That's going to write into the user profile row all this item. It's the same thing in this case. The onboarding timestamp is going to be the current date time. I'll explain why in a second. Cool. So once we have this basic sort of screen set up and we've got our action that says, okay, I want to sign up, what we can now do is set some visibility options on this. Oh, my bad. 1 second. Cool. So this screen is only going to let us move forward if we haven't already onboarded. Okay. Great. So now we're going to add a new screen called, and it's going to come from our globals table, and you'll see why in a second. This is going to be our home screen. So in here, we're going to have our profile view. So this is going to be the user profile's name, subtitle we don't need. Image is going to be the user profile's photo to display. Awesome. Now when I view the app as myself, cool. So you can see now I've built out a home view where I've got my sort of own profile there. So what I might like to do is have an action here that actually shows my profile. Like this. And stick a little icon on there. And the action on this button could be show user profile screen. So from the home view now, if I want to go and see my profile, I can click through there, and that's going to bring me to the profile screen, which I can go and sort of build out to allow, let's say, someone to edit their own profile. Okay. And these profile containers are really cool now because what you can do is you can customize how the container looks as well as the title component itself. So as I say, I like to go with the accent because I just think this looks really clean. And if we view this in sort of desktop mode, it gives that lovely sort of clean view. And you can kind of build that out to suit. We might add a hint in here that says, you know, welcome to the survey app, something like that. Cool. So now for the most important part, submissions. We're going to add in a view here called My Submissions. And again, we like to go for a custom screen. So when you add a new tab, I recommend going for a custom tab because if you pull a tab from a certain data source or in a certain view, you can't have all sorts of different components pulling from different data sources on there. So going for a custom screen that pulls from a sort of globals type table means you can then drop all sorts of stuff onto that screen. So it gives you much more flexibility. So in the My Submissions view, let's give it a nice little icon like this. Cool. And then we'll copy this container and we'll paste it in here. And let's, rather than showing the user's profile, let's take our, oh, my bad. Let's call it build with V88, and the image, let's take the logo that we've uploaded there. And then this action wants to be a form because we're going to be using a form to collect these surveys. So the action on this title is going to be show form screen. And we can choose how it looks, but I'm going to go for slide in because then it slides up and it looks super nice. New submission, something like that. And let's go for a plus icon. Great. So what we can now do is build our form out. So we've got our data structure, we have our table of submissions ready. So now let's create a form that allows us to actually populate that table. So we're going to go new submission, and this is the destination, i.e. where is this form putting data? So in our case, we're going to choose submissions. And because Glide is genius, what it's done is populated a number of these fields for us, right? So we've got the name, property name, we've got the address that we want to collect, and it's already writing to the correct column. We've got the value, which is going to write straight into value. And then there's the property type. So this is where we're going to introduce a choice component, which, as I say, is really powerful, and we use them all the time. So what I'm going to do here is add in a choice component. Okay. And this choice component is going to write into the type ID of our submissions table. So that's where it's going to put the choice. But we're going to pull from types. The value is going to be the ID, but we're going to display it as the name. And let's say we want it as chips. So now suddenly a user can simply select what type of property it is. Like that. We'll make that one required. And we can remove this. Great. So the next one we've got is a note, which again we'll make required. And finally, a photo. Now, there's these two values here where we want to collect when and who submitted it. Now, when a lot of people build with Glide, what they tend to do is write this directly into a form. But there's a much smarter way of doing this that saves time and actually removes all scope for error. So provided people are signing into this app, we can remove the entry point for who submitted it and use a special column, a component. So in your components here, if you type in the word special, just to get to them quickly, you'll see firstly, we can pull the current date and time. So I'm going to include that here, and it's already written it straight into the audit timestamp for me because it just knows. And the same thing for the user's email address. So again, these values pull from this pulls from the current user's email address. So if I select this, it's going to write into audit/email. So now our form is automatically capturing not only all of this data that's being entered, but who submitted it and when they submitted it. So that's really cool. So let's go and submit something. And I'm just going to create a quick test submission. Oscar's Penthouse, let's call it. The address, 123 Rodeo Drive, I wish. The value, let's say 800,000. It's an apartment. Little note, something like that. And then we can go and upload a photo. Okay. So we've hit submit. Now what do we do? Let's have a look and see if it's actually arrived. There we go. Just delete this top row. So what we can see now is we've started to populate our database from the form we've just built. So now we actually want to see this. How do we actually see this data that we've just submitted? So we're going to come over to here and we're going to add in a component, and we're going to add in a collection. So a collection is a list of items from one of Glide's one of your tables in your app. We'll go with the list view because it's super clean. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with lists, but the most important thing to show you guys is we want to pull it from submissions. So there we go, automatically there. We might want to give it a name, my submissions. We're already adding them here, but you can add directly from a list. So we're going to remove this, and we're also going to remove the ability to edit for now, but we'll keep the search bar. And then we want to populate this list. So let's go, the title is the name of the property. let's say the description is the, I don't know, audit timestamp, something like that. And the image has already come through from the photo. So as you can see, we've already, just like that, built a list of our submissions. So I can go and add in another one now. I'll show you guys my mansion this time. 123 P88 Road. Like that. It's going to be a house this time. Here's an example note. And we're going to upload a photo of the house. Also, for the record, not mine. Great. So there we go. We've got two submissions, and you can add as many of these now, and they will all just populate this list, which is beautiful. So now the next thing is, well, we want to click into one of these and see everything, right? So by default, collections action is to show the detail screen, i.e. to show the data that we're clicking on. So let's select Oscar's Penthouse and see what Glide has come up with. So at the moment, it's just pulled through the name, but it's given us a title component to play with. And we know we have an image. So let's take the image from the report, and let's say, actually, we want to show this, we want to make this look a bit sweeter. So we'll go like this and just populate the top of the screen with that beautiful image. Let's say we want to pull the date and time through here of when it was submitted. So just like that. And then there's some extra information that we entered. So we can add in fields, which Glide's already given us here. And we can simply add an item and start pulling through some of this data. So it's pulled through the value for us. The name we already have. So let's go for the address. We might also want to collect the note. And what else have we got here? We've got the photo, we've got the timestamp. Great. So that's sort of everything that we need. The one thing that we haven't set up yet is we chose a property type, but at the moment we've only got the ID in our submissions table here. So I'm going to show you just really quickly how to build a relation so we can pull through the type that somebody's actually chosen. So under our type column, we're capturing the ID already from this types table here. So I'm going to create a relation now. And this is going to be called type relation. And this is going to be a relation where the value in our type ID matches the value in our types row ID. And there you go. But now, what if you want to actually just pull through the name of what was chosen there? So what we can introduce off the back of a relation, which is a super common combination, is a lookup. So we'll go like this. We'll pull through the name. So we're now going to do a lookup on the type relation, and we're going to pull through the name. So that now in our table of submissions, we have the name. Now, the foundation of a lot of this stuff revolves around exactly what I've just shown you guys there. It's the combination of relations and lookups to display data that's linked from other tables. Happens all over the place. So now in our fields, we can also add in the type name. And let's just call this type. Okay, great. So that's all set up. So if I come back and go through into my mansion, there we go. We can see my submission. Check my to-do list to see what else we can add to this. Do we know how much time I've got left of the half an hour? How much have I used? I must have a bit of time left.
We have a little bit of time left. You're okay. On a good run right now.
We're nearly there, I think. We're nearly there.
Almost there. Almost there.
So we've created our users table. We're able to submit things. One thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is row owners. And this is a really, really important feature to be aware of. I know Andy was probably going to ask me this, and so I'll tell you guys. So when a user installs a Glide app as standard, the app will download all rows of data associated, all rows of data that the app is using. And what that can quickly do is make your app run kind of slowly if there's a lot of data in there. And also it's not very secure if you only want users to see their own information. So what you can introduce, and it's actually done it by default, is on the user's email column, you can introduce row owners. Now you can see here, I've got the option to remove it. But whenever you add row owners to a table, what it means is that the device will only download any data associated with that user's email address. And so if you imagine you have an app with a whole lot of submissions, but the user only really needs to see their ones, then you can apply row owners to the users table and the submissions table over here in our order email. We can go and make row owner. What that means is when I install this app, even if hundreds of people all over the world have submitted data, I'll only download my rows, which will mean the app will run like lightning despite having a huge database load of submissions. And I hope that makes sense.
I think to add on there, because we did get a question in the chat about security. Yeah, that's another way too, because you're only downloading the data that is associated with your user. You're not downloading other data. So there's a security implication there as well for securing your app.
100%. If you want an app that's secure for a given user, and that's going to be, in terms of performance, as quick as possible, row owners are super important. Just be aware that if you want all users to see other people's information, then it makes it a little bit trickier. There are ways to do it, but on a basic level, if you want security and privacy and speed, row owners is the way to go. So I'm just going to finish the onboarding page, and then we could potentially, if there's time, have people sign up and submit some stuff.
It sounds good to me.
Cool. Give me literally 1 min. So what I'm doing here is just only showing the welcome screen until someone signs up, so that we can then only show the home and submission screen. So on the submission screen, we want to see it when the user profile's onboarding timestamp is not empty, which is correct. And the same here. It's not empty. Great. So let's check this is set up. Cool. So we'll create a custom action here so that we can onboard you guys and pop up a notification, let's say. So we've got our action already. Onboard and notify. So what we've already done is we've set the column values in the user profile row with the current date time as the onboarding timestamp. So let's add something that says show notification. This is an on-screen notification that will just say, welcome. And let's send an email to you guys as well. So Glide apps can send emails straight from the app. So we're going to send an email to the user's email address, and let's subject it, welcome to the 88 build. And the body can be, thanks for joining the stream. Something like that. Smiley face. So this custom action is awesome, because not only can we use it here, but what Glider are now introducing is the ability to reuse your actions elsewhere. So once you create an action that's custom and you want it to also happen somewhere else in the app, you can simply pick from your library of your own actions, not just have to recreate it every single time. So bear that in mind. It's a really, really powerful feature. Great. So what I'm hoping happens now is when I click go, screen visibility. 1 second. Cool. Okay, nice. We're there. So what we could do now, if we've got some time, is we could publish this app and let some people submit some data.
I'm on standby with my phone, so cool. Let's do that. Could you also click over to actions? You were mentioning the saved actions. So the new actions editor that we have, here's a little sneak peek of it. This is a brand new interface for Glide. It's been in beta for the last little while. this is what it looks like. So when we talk about actions, that's the first step, a totally new actions editor, but also these integrations as well. And I think we might, if we have time, we'll take a look at one of these integrations as a follow-up here.
These custom actions and the ability to use them elsewhere, it's just so powerful. Having your own library of actions and things like that, it's a complete game changer. So thank you. Thank you, Glide, for that one. Let's just let that publish. Okay, so shall I pull up the QR?
Let's pull up that QR code.
Sweet. I'm going to scan it as well myself over here.
And I can verify that I am on the app on my phone.
Awesome. Nice. Shall I put it up again? Shall I put it up again?
Let's open that one more time. And then we're going to complete the next step. We're doing the onboarding, right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. For anybody following along, if you're here on the stream or you're watching the recording and the app is still live, here's the QR code. Oscar, do you mind dropping the link in the chat as well for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Do I need to do that from the YouTube side, Andy?
You can drop it in the private chat.
Cool.
On the streaming side, and I'll throw it over. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Show this when onboarding timestamp is empty. That's better. Okay, that's better.
All right. So we're on, for all of us who are on the app, we see the login screen. We're ready to go. Just need to be able to sign up now.
Are we there? Are we able to enter our email address in? Let me check the comments while. Are you in, Andy?
There. It helps if I unmute myself. I am in. There's a profile page.
Awesome. Have you onboarded?
I'm going through right now. So this is another thing too for folks who may not be familiar, but when we talk about the image component, I don't know if you can see that, but when we talk about the image component on desktop, that's going to prompt you to upload an image. But if you're on mobile, you can also take a photo. So for me right now, I'm going to do a selfie for my profile picture. But you can imagine you're building a form, you're building a field app. This is a way you can snap photos out in the field. Nothing fancy. All right, take photo, selfie cam going.
Let me have a look at the comment. Terrence got into the app, works great. That's a lot accomplished in 30 minutes. Yeah, I went for a lot in 30 minutes here, guys.
That's great. There we go. Image uploaded.
Fantastic.
right. So I'll stop interrupting here and let's keep going.
Yeah, so let me just make sure I've got something right on here. So what should happen now, because we have row owners enabled, is you guys should all be able to sign up or sign in and add some submissions. Now, whilst I have, here's a little spanner in the works for you. Whilst I've been developing this app, my dad and partner, Mark, has been building an admin app. What's the best method to this point? Sorry, I will answer these questions at the end. So what I'm going to do is switch across to the admin app now to give you an example of what it would look like if we can see sort of all submissions. Let me check with them. How are you getting on? Or do you need a bit more time?
Literally 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you are good to go.
Can I jump across?
Hit it.
Okay.
Phew.
Let's see. V88 field admin. Let's see what he's come up with. Okay. So this is how it would look from the other side of things. So this would be what your team, let's say, back at base. So what I've just designed is your app to actually submit data on a personal level. But what if we want to review it all and analyze it? So first things we've got, which he's created, which is brilliant, nice work, thank you, is a view of submissions. So broken down by type as well. So we can see all house submissions, we can see apartment submissions coming in. Let's click on one and see Oscar's Mansion. There we go. Brilliant. That's great. What we can also see is some analysis. So far we've had 8 submissions in total, and this is done using a roll-up column, Glide's special roll-up column. Really, really powerful column. You can roll up on all sorts of values. We've also got the average value of submissions coming in, which is super cool. So we're going big with this, it looks, guys. We've got a basic chart component here to just show it broken down by type. So we've got 1 apartment at the moment and 7 houses. You can use bar charts, pie charts, all sorts of really cool graphs within Glide. And we've got our audit trail. So we've got a timestamp database of all of your submissions coming in, which is unreal. And then we've got the users. So Andy, can we click on your profile? Do you mind? Oh yes, never mind. We haven't set that up. We haven't set that up.
I was gonna say yes, but it's not set up yet.
Well, look, I mean, we could build this out if we wanted to, but I don't want to go too far. So you can see, hopefully, you can kind of get an idea as to what you can do here within a very short time frame. We've been able to build an app that you guys have actually signed into, onboarded. You're now submitting reports that we can view live as they come in. So shall we sort of open the floor for some questions? How do you want to go with this, Andy?
Let's do that. So we have quite a number of questions here.
Okay.
Let's jump into some of these. So when we are talking about the use of Glide tables, which is what we've demoed here, so Glide's native data source, versus something like Airtable, Google Sheets, Excel, these other data sources that Glide connects to.
Yeah.
Terrence is asking about the limitations. What are the considerations that you have when choosing tables versus like an external data source?
So it really depends on a number of factors. What I would say is Glide tables is if your app is largely going to be within Glide, then I would recommend Glide tables because it's faster. So your data is going to synchronize much quicker. It's much simpler to build out your app as well because all of the data is within Glide. So you don't have to worry about building out, let's say, a Google Sheet or an Airtable base first, and then kind of replicating it in Glide. If you have all sorts of integrations and things like that, then perhaps a couple of months ago I would have said go with Google Sheets or Airtable, because then you can connect much more easily with something like Zapier or Make without the need to use any use of Glide's API. But with the introduction of Glide's own integrations now just kind of starting to really ramp up, that may not be my answer to that one anymore. And I think really it's a case of what does your app need to connect to, and based on your skill level and how much time you've got, go from there. In terms of sort of scalability and things like that, they're pretty similar. I think it really depends on functionality. But I would always say, and this is what I say to my customers, is if you can go with Glide tables, then do it, because the performance of your app is just going to be that little bit better.
And a follow-up related to your answer there, another question from Terrence about the new Actions editor, these new integrations. Is this a replacement for Zapier? Oscar, you want to bring up the Actions screen again on your end? So what I would say to this is that yes and no. It depends on what you're building and what you're using. So we are rolling out a bunch of new integrations that allow you to connect directly to these other services, these other tools, without needing a middle solution like Zapier. But the nice thing about Zapier and Make is that it allows you to connect to a bunch of other things that we may not have a direct integration for. So it really comes down to the project that you're building. What integrations do you need? Does that integration exist natively within Glide already, or is it something that you might use Zapier for? So it, like so many other things, it depends on your project and what you're building.
Yeah. Seb's got Wandering Seb has a great question about building admin and user apps as separate apps. Can I touch on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. Let me pull that up here.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it comes down really to the first thing to consider is if you're using row owners in your kind of end user app, and you want an app that shows all data associated with all users, then an easy way to do that is to have a dedicated admin app separately. What I will also say on that point is that because the nature of Glide's pricing and the concept of teams, you don't pay on a per app basis. And sometimes it takes just as long to try and build different users with different roles and permissions into one app as it does to separate them out. So it keeps it a lot cleaner and a lot more streamlined and a lot faster, I think, in my opinion, if you break it into the two apps, but it's not an absolute must.
Yeah, it seems like so much of when it comes to any sort of Glide project, it's what is the actual thing that we're trying to solve here? Like what you're creating when you're building Glide apps is you're creating a solution. And so it's what's the problem that we're trying to solve? How do we best solve that problem?
Yeah.
Using apps.
Yeah.
There was another question here I'm going to bring up from MWJ on the question of row owners. This is a pretty common situation too, where you're building apps that rarely will people only be looking at things that they submit themselves. In these scenarios, when would you use row ownership? What's your thought on that, Oscar?
Yeah, so the row ownership is only going to be applied to any table that has row owners applied to it. So, for example, let me give a great example. If I removed row owners from the submissions table, thanks for pulling that back up. If I remove row owners from my submissions table here, then this view is no longer going to show only mine. So it won't let me access any other user's information because I still have that applied here. But if I remove it from here, like this, then when I come back to my submissions, see, I can now see all of them. So you can do a bit of both. And it really just depends on which parts do you want to keep private/secure and which parts can be public facing. That's really what it comes down to. And what I always say, and that's why I specifically built this app data first, is because it's very easy to get super excited by how you can build out these user interfaces so brilliantly within Glide. But the key is always in how you structure your data. And that's how we work with our customers. We understand what they're trying to do. As you say, what problem are they trying to solve? We'll build the data structure first, and then we'll put a UI on top of it so that all the important stuff around security and performance is nailed before we choose kind of how it's going to look, because that's the easy part of the glide.
I think that's a really, really good call out there when it comes to how do you approach building an app. As Oscar was saying, like lots of folks start by considering the interface. You're basically building these blocks and figuring out what data do I need to put into these blocks versus, especially with more complicated builds, you're going to want to start with the data. Like what data are we working with first? The information that you're going to be displaying, the information calculations that you need to work with, and then work from there to figure out how do we present this? How do we use this in our interfaces? We have time, I think, for one more question. Let's see here. And for any questions that we don't get to, by the way, we have saved these questions, but you can also hit the Glide community and bring your questions over there. Lots of really smart folks who can jump on those answers. I'm going to show this one again from Seb. Talking about security, we talked about row ownership. Any other advice on handling security in Glide apps?
I think ultimately it comes down to how secure does your app need to be and for what reasons? You know, are there certain compliances that you're trying to abide to? Or is it simply a case that you do not want users to access each other's information? Row owners is the way. It's the best way to do it. It's kind of standard Glide practice, and that guarantees you security. What a lot of people try and do is, rather than introducing row owners, they filter. So I could, for example, hide these submissions here. I could say, I could filter and say, show me where the audit email is the signed in user. So that's filtered me back to just myself, but that's only on the front end. So my device is still going to download everyone else's submissions. So the key to security is with row owners when it comes to these Glide apps.
All right. Thank you so much, Oscar. I think that's going to be it for us right now. We are coming up at time. I thank you so much for jumping on this with us. For everybody else who missed part of this session, if you have additional questions that you want to bring up, we're also community.glideapps.com. If you're curious about the Actions Editor, these new integrations, we got a bunch of stuff coming out this week covering that. Until then, thank you. Thanks for joining Build with Glide. Learn more about V88, Oscar, things that the team's up to, head over to v88.co.uk. Link will be in the notes down below. And of course, you can start building for free, start building your own Glide apps for free. Play with the Actions Editor, integrations, glideapps.com. Get started for free. That's it for us. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye.